So next up, we want to get into the Finnish presidential election that happened last week.
This is going to be the only show where you can see two Americans talking about the Finnish presidential election. Just want to point that out.
Hell yeah. So the center-right candidate Alex Stubb defeated leftist Green Party candidate Pekka Haavisto. This was billed as the most important election in decades because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but honestly, I'm not sure it was by the end based on the candidates because they ended up having very similar policies. In Finland, there's a president and a prime minister. The president is head of state, while the prime minister is head of government. That means the president's role is more as the representative of Finland to the world and commander-in-chief of its armed forces. So the reason this is billed as the most important election in decades is, of course, because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, how it's on the warpath, how Finland borders Russia, and it just joined NATO last year. So there's a lot of concern about security. So Stubb is extremely pro-Europe and very anti-Russia. There were slight differences at the end of the election that came up about how open the president would be to having weapons and troops from NATO allies placed in Finland, specifically at the border with Russia. Stubb, who was elected, was more open to that. But generally, this is just a huge shift from what Finland's policy has been since the end of the Cold War, and even before that, because they had been all about appeasing Russia, right? Making sure that the big bear didn't come in and trample all over them because they were nice enough. And then as soon as Russia invaded Ukraine, they thought, oh, fuck, this might not work anymore. Russia is clearly willing to go out on the warpath, so we need to take a harder stance and make sure that it's clear that we're completely shut down. Yeah.
And so the politics of Finland are really interesting. They were ruled by a social democratic party for the last couple years. This social democratic party was in coordination and in coalition with the Center Party, the Green League, which I believe this president candidate was a member of.
The opposing candidate,
yes. The opposing candidate. The Left Alliance and the Swedish People's Party of Finland. The opposition was the Finns Party, the National Coalition Party, which is the party of the winner of this, the Christian Democrats movement now, and Power Belongs to the People. Now, the Finns Party is interesting because it is a right-wing populist party, and it was the largest member of the opposition to the Social Democratic government. Now, this was in 2019. Sanna Marin led this. Was the prime minister of Finland. She also initiated the process of Finland joining NATO. Okay. So now with the new election, the post 2023 elections, it's flipped. The National Coalition Party is now the largest party, followed by the Finns Party, which have gained 10 and 7 seats, respectively. Now, what I want to note about the Finns Party is they are right-wing populist. But they are not necessarily anti-NATO. They have some anti-EU sentiments, but they really feel that the largest problem coming in is with the larger issue of Russian national security, and they're not willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, NATO and the EU has to go in the face of a possible Russian attack. That's not where they're at.
That makes sense. I feel like that's an issue that many far-right populist parties in Europe might come to.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if Russia gets to the point where it's knocking at their door, but they're going to realize, oh, wait a second, isolation doesn't actually feel that good in this instance.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah. I'll say that the parties that lost support weren't actually the Social Democratic Party. The Social Democratic Party actually gained seats in the last election. The party that kind of got decimated was the Center Party. It was that center-centrist party that lost a lot of support to the National Coalition Party, that center-right party.
Interesting.
Yeah. But, so now we're at this point where Finland, which has a very strong military, Finland has a very, very strong military, and it makes Russia scared that they're now in NATO. Finland funded their military so well, specifically for the reason that they weren't in NATO for so long, and they had to rely on their own security. Now that they're tied into the larger NATO structure, it makes Russia more nervous, as it should.
Yeah, agreed.